Hi, I'm Rona, the traveling quilter, and we're back with week 4 of the Winter Quilt Along Charming Spirals. This week, we're going to be tackling the dreaded Y seam, and I promise you, it's not as bad as not as bad as it seems. But before we jump in, I just want a quick reminder, if you haven't already, head over to the website ronatheribbeter.com, link is below, and download the fabric requirements, and you can also find all the previous weeks there and jump right in at any time. So, Y seams. It's funny because when I first tried Y seams, I had no idea what I was doing, but somehow I had managed to design a quilt for my husband that had 42 Y seams in them. And of course, it didn't occur to me until I'd already shown him the design and he loved it. Then I had to make it. But that's okay, because about halfway through, if that, of doing all of these Y seams, I figured out there's a trick. There's a little trick that you can do that actually will make your Y seams darn near perfect every time. And that's exactly what I'm going to share with you right now. For this block, you're going to need, of course, your fabric, but you're also going to need a ruler that has a visible 1/4 inch line on it that you can see. Of course, your rotary cutter, and then a fabric pencil or fabric pen of some kind that you can actually see the fabric with, or see on the fabric, I should say. And then, of course, our fabric pieces. So for this one, and again, the newsletter was sent out this morning, and it has all of your fabric requirements for your blocks. This one, we're going to start with just these 3 pieces for the Y seam itself. So I have 2 pieces that are cut. And remember, I'm using pre-cuts for this project. So I trimmed down 2 pieces from jelly roll strips. And they are 2.5 inches wide by 5 inches long, and I have 2 of them. And then I took one of my little mini charm squares. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create our angles for our Y seam. I'll show you, these are the blocks here. So right now we're going to create these angled pieces. So I'll show you how we do that. We're going to start with our 2 pieces that are 2.5 by 5. And I want to put them wrong sides together and line them up so that the edges match as perfectly as possible. Then you'll notice how on your ruler, you have this diagonal line that comes through it. So what I want to do is I want to line up that diagonal line so that it's right along the edge of my fabric, and that point comes also to the point of the fabric. And then trim it off. Now be sure to keep these triangles, because you can always make it, literally, you can like leave them together and you can make little half square triangles. There's all kinds of projects you can do with those later. So now you have your angled pieces and your square. So you'll notice also that these pieces are slightly longer than this one, and that's okay. It's perfectly fine, because we're going to trim it all when we're done. So the next step is we need to mark where we're going to sew. Now, first thing I want to do is flip all this over. And this is where our 1/4 inch line comes in on the ruler. So I found it a little bit difficult with these pre-cut mini charms, because you see how the edges are there, which, I mean, is nice to keep them from fraying and all of that, which is the reason why they cut them that way. But it makes it a little difficult when you're lining up your ruler, because am I putting my 1/4 inch line on the outside of that scallop or on the inside? It's really, and then some of them are not exactly completely straight. So I just kind of wing it a little bit. So I basically just want to get this 1/4 inch line, and I want to line it up with the outside of my piece there. And then I'm just gonna draw a line where you have your 1/4 inch, and I'm gonna turn it and do the same thing with the next side. And it's just these two sides. And we're doing this on the wrong side of our fabric. Okay, then you can see my little crisscross, because what we're looking for is this point right there where they intersect. Now we're gonna do the same thing for our other pieces, but I don't wanna draw this angled line yet. I only want that point for right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw the straight line on this side. If I can get it so my ruler doesn't slide around. And then, like I said, just put that line there. And then I'm going to do, on the angled side, I'm only going to cross here at this point. Because, like I said, we will do this later. But what I'm looking for right now is that point right there. And I'm going to do the same thing with my third piece. And I apologize, this is like gray on gray on gray, so it's hard to see this last piece. Let's see. So I get my line. And then this side line here. And the cross. Okay, so now we have our 3 points where they intersect. Now I need to grab a pin. Now comes the fun part. I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to push the end of it right through there. Try not to poke yourself in the finger. I've done that way too many times. And then I'm going to take one of these pieces and I'm going to bring that pin. I want these two fabrics to be right sides together, and I want to bring that pin up through that point. And you might can maneuver it just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now it's through the pin on that side, or through the point on that side, and through the points on that side. So now I'm going to line up this straight edge. Now remember, this angled piece is last. We're doing the straight edges first. So I'm going to line these up. You'll see that their edges lined up as close as possible with that edge there. And then I'm going to hold it in place and then pin it. So now we're going to stitch this down. I'm going to start from the outside and I'm going to come in. So I guess it'll be on this side. Come in, but don't go all the way up to the point. Keep it, I want you to stop maybe half a stitch before, like just barely before, and then back stitch. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's see if that shows up. If you can see the thread, I should have used a different color. I apologize for that. But this is where my seam ends, and then I back stitched just a couple. So I could have even gotten a little bit closer, but if I had gone one more stitch over, it would have gone on the line. And that's not what we want. Remember, we want to end like half a stitch or so before that point. So now I'm just going to finger press this open. There we go. Okay. Goodness gracious. Okay, so now I'm just going to finger press this open, just like that. And I always press these ones open. So one, they'll lay flatter, but also it's easier to like move the pieces around. So now we want to add our third piece. So I'm going to turn this one just like that. Make sure my seam is open. And just like before, I'm going to place my pin right on that center point right there. And this time we're going to line this edge with this one. So I want to put this pin right in between here. And that's another reason where that opening comes in. So I'm going to line, and I'm literally just holding the pin in between those two. where that point comes together. And then I'm going to line up this edge, make sure that it's flat, and then again, pin it in place. So same thing, I want to stitch it from the outside in, but I'm going to, when I stitch this, I want to hold this open, or hold this down this side, because I don't want to stitch over this seam. I want this to be open. So I'm going to hold it just like that when I stitch, and I'm going to stitch from the outside in, and again, I'm going to stop just short of that seam. Now that I've stitched it, you can see that my seam, once again, comes right up, but just before the line. See, there's a little gap right there. And when I stitched the other side, I made sure that this flap was open. So again, you can see on this side, it's harder to see on this one. It actually ends right there. The seam does. Now, once again, I'm going to finger press this open, just like that. And this time I'm going to press these, not the corner. I'm just going to press these outer sides here. But like I said, not this corner yet. Leave that the way it is. Now that we have our two sides, we're going to fold them right sides together. Now most people are going to try, when they do this, they're going to try and line up this bottom part just like that, right? They're focusing on this edge and these edges. No, I don't care about this bottom at all. What I care about is lining up this corner. I want this seam and the back seam to line up. So I'm looking to make sure that this outer edge forms a perfect triangle, and that you can see how this corner comes together, and then this front side, you can see how it comes together, right? So now I'm just going to kind of lightly press down on that triangle, and then keeping this in place, I'm going to slide my ruler so that, because remember, I want those seams to stay together. I'm going to slide my ruler over, and I'm going to line up the edge of the ruler with the edge of that triangle, just like that. Now, this is the triangle line. With my pencil, I'm going to draw it straight down. So now we have a perfect straight angle. And it's okay if these sides don't perfectly align. That's okay, because this seam being straight makes all the difference in the world. So I'm just going to mark this. Then I'm just going to hold the fabric, slide this back, and pin it so that it stays in place. This is the one technique where I use a lot of pins. Most of my other blocks, I don't use a lot of pins. This one I do. So this is what it looks like. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that these two outer folds stay down. And then I'm going to stitch on that line, starting at this corner. Do not stitch over your top. You just want to stitch starting on this piece and stitch that straight line down. And I'll show you. And this is what it looks like. My seam is stitched all the way down, and I've got it so that it comes right up to the edge here, but does not stitch here. So now the moment of truth. We're going to open it up, and I'm going to press this. So also now, see how this is kind of wonky? What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this side down so that it's like that, and then fold it over. So it kind of forms like a little box corner there. And then I'll go ahead and press this with the iron. Ta-da! Look at that. Darn near perfect Y seam. Now all we have to do is trim it to complete our block, and these are going to be trimmed to 4.5 by 4.5. So I'm going to come to, I always do it so that the 1/2 inch side is on the outside there. I'm not sure why. I think my brain just works that way. But I want to make sure that I'm lining it up. So this will be 4.5. Well, we can do it this way. 4.5. So this is 4.5 by 4.5. So how I do this is I put it so that the 2.25, there's this little dot that's right there on the 2.25 mark. I put that right in that center where the Y seam is. And then I line up this outside, or I mean the diagonal here, and then trim it. And like I said, it's okay if the edges, if not all the edges are perfect. See, it's that, again, that little scallop edge is a little wonky, but that's okay. As long as we have these two, that's another reason why I like to make these a little bit longer and trim them down, so that way I know when I'm going to add them to the next block, I can line it up straight. So again, we're going to go on our 4.5. So I can line up on this edge of 4.5 and this edge on the 4.5. So even though the other sides are slightly smaller, that's okay. I still have those two edges. Okay, so now that we have it trimmed, and again, this side is a little bit short and these outer sides is a little bit short, but that's okay because when I put these together, so I'm gonna, in order to put the full block together, this is how it's gonna look. And I need to stitch this side. So when I put them right sides together, I can line up this side and this side, and I know that it's centered. Even though the little bit of this side is short, a little bit of that side is short, even a little bit here is short, it's okay. I know that this is now centered because, like I said, that straight edge and that straight edge line up. So then I can stitch it right down the side. Now all you have to do is make a second one of your Y seams and then stitch your final block. And there you have it, the dreaded Y seam. It's not so dreaded anymore, I promise. Like I said, if you follow those quick little tips, then you can get a near perfect Y seam almost every time. That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be doing putting our big blocks together, basically blocks within blocks within blocks, kind of. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. As always, my friend, happy quilting.